Welcome everyone and welcome to our next edition, the third installation of Misconceptions of Kali worship and Shakti worship in Trinidad and Tobago. This edition we will look into another statement from those two videos that I have posted previously about statements being made that are filled with misconceptions that are not necessarily founded, factual and so forth. And they, because of what has been said in those videos, can cause harm, disturbances within the worship, and can create a lot of muddy, yet can create a lot of dark spots within the worship, and which will cause a lot of, how should I put this, will cause more or less issues between both the Sada side, both on the Balidan side, and so forth. So this is me once more on this installation trying to debunk statements of misconception and miseducation within the Shakti worship within Trinidad and Tobago. Right? So in this third part we look at another individual who within those two videos, and this would have been still part of the first video, where an individual, and this is his conception or his opinion, this is where he states we go into the aspect of where he looks into when our grandparents came from when they came upon the boat, or our great grandparents. So this is what he had to say, right? Stating that our grandparents would have talked Hindi, and our great grandparents would have talked Hindi, stating, right, that we would have not understood them. They would have traveled, come on the boats, and we would have not been able to understand them. He also goes on that our parents would have been able to understand them, stating we were in the dark. We were in the dark when certain rituals was done. We would have been sent to the front. Right? They, our great or grandparents, would have gone and done their rituals or their thing, and we would have been sent upstairs or in our room or wherever and told, don't look, this has nothing to do with you. Now, this is a statement of an individual that, as I am disheartened to say, should know better. Supposed to know better and should know better where the history or the worship is concerned, especially family traditions. If you are an individual that is promoting Kali worship in Trinidad and Tobago, and you're talking about the history, please, you're supposed to know it inside out and know the pros and cons of it. Because when you say what you say in the context that you say it, and it is not factual, it's not founded, because you're supposed to be a leader, you're supposed to be a teacher, a guru, or something of that nature, someone that is supposed to be enlightened, somebody supposed of respected nature also, people would look up to you and expect you to speak truth to them. But if it is not practical and they themselves don't know, they will run with what, because they have faith in you and they believe in you. So this statement where the individual talks about, our grandparents, who some of us grandparents did actually came from India, depending on how old we are. Our great grandparents also would have come from India as young adults or little children, and yes, they would have spoken Hindi. Now, there are different facets and aspects of Hindi based on the era that they came from. And there are distinctive areas that indentured laborers did come. And we will look into that in my next topic that I want to look into further a little down the road. We will look into where they came from and what transpired when they came to the Caribbean, who went where, as in Suriname, Guyana, and so forth, and who came to Trinidad. To more or less piece the origin and the timeline to where the worship would have been cultivated, and we'll look at that in a later video down the road. Right? So we're fine. Now, he stated that we, as in you and I, or even him, would have not been able to understand our grandparents or our great-grand. Our parents would have been able to understand them to some extent, which I can give into that also, to some aspects, not fully, because I had a grandmother that came to right? That came. I had a great grandmother that came from me as a child. Um, my grandmother was born and she grew up in Trinidad, and being around her, right, I had little knowledge of my grandmother, but I could have understood what she said when she spoke in Hindi, or the aspect of Hindi that she spoke into, because there, as I said, there are different facets, different aspects depending on the region that they came from, right, where it would kind of been standard or broken in this aspect, and we'll go further to that in a different video, right. My grandmother spoke fluent Hindi, or the aspect of Hindi, the language that she learned from her parents and eventually her mother-in-law, which was my great grandmother. Right? That is, I was able to understand her fluently, both what she was saying, both in the nature she was saying it, be it was in kind words or other type. Right? When different elders or different, you know, grandparent people, grandparents or whatever, or great grand, who would come, and as those who grew up in a very, very family oriented village, when the elders come or who go to visit this poor or that poor, and they sit down and they would talk in their, what I may say, their vernacular or their language, because they don't want the younger children to hear what they're saying if they're speaking about somebody in particular that the child may know, right? I was able to understand my grandmother because she taught me, and I understood what, you know, what the other poor or the other grandmother who was there was speaking, right? I learned. So to some extent I could give in to what he's saying, but there's a lot of people would discredit and refute what he's saying, because there are a lot of people of my age bracket and even a little younger were able to understand their grandparents or their great parents who spoke Hindi, because they were taught. They were taught by their grandparents or their great grandparents. So I can go 60-40 on what he's saying. Okay, fine. Let us get to what the rituals that was done. The rituals that was done, and they say that we were in the dark to what they were doing. Now, I do not know where he got his information from. I do not know if he did a research, he did a survey, I don't know. But from the individuals that I have spoken to countless times, who comes from old family traditions, old family traditions, which, you know, in that aspect, based on what the different families would have been doing, worship or offerings for what we know in vernacular terms in China, what is considered the D, as in DWH, D. Now, a D is not necessarily as in D, D as in not as in this D Baba or Sangali D Baba, or now that we know that, you know, Master of the Land is considered, is known as Sangali Karapa, right? A D also can be female, not all solely just male. It depends on the family tradition that came from India, or the village tradition that came with them when they came from India to the Caribbean, where you have people would have more or less worship a village deity, not necessarily male, could be female. Let us look at some names. We look at Paramit, that great infamous Parameshri Mata. We look at her history, and there are some aspects when they talk about the different aspects, or Angala or Tamaria Parameshri. She is a village deity, and there it is people would have worshipped that particular deity, and that eventually was their D. Right? Eventually it was incorporated and became was called family, or Kaula, 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 more or less meaning family tradition aspect, which my family is a part of. My family is lineage is Parameshri, so I am a child of Parameshri, so I follow the traditions that would have been passed on from my great grandmother, who was a Pujarian, coming downwards my great grandmother, my grandfather, coming down to my dad, and then to me, and so forth. There are a lot of families, not just now in South, also on the East-West corridor, certain parts of Central and whatever, that are very integrated into their family tradition and custom that they have been following since the inception of time. I'm talking about not just the old heads. We are talking coming down to those who would have been in the bracket of my dad, right? My dad and that generation, even my generation, and even now younger than me, they are very much into their family tradition, right? And they know it to a T, the same way they were offering the fowl cock, they're offering the goat, they're offering the hog, whatever they're doing, what we call in local terms again, offering terrapin, and this aspect, the drink and smoke aspect, they are more or less very, they're doing it in much detail. So again, I do not know where this individual got his information that we would have been in the dark. This is what you're creating misconception again. If we were to do a survey or research of a people, a group of people, let's say between 1 to 100, you would find that roughly 65%, if not 70 and upwards, not more, let's say we wouldn't go as far as 75, would have known their family traditions. The other percentage leading to the 100 is where you would have had those where the broken, the bits and pieces or fragments missing. And yes, I understand it because there aren't one or two of those. But there are circumstances and situations that brought about those missing pieces and parts of people didn't understand what their grandparents was doing and they wasn't told. There are situations that led to that. Some people died before it was passed on. Some people choose not to. Some people didn't end something. There are different situations that will lead to those factors. But it is not totally 100% that way. You have roughly, as I said, 65 to 70% that do follow their family traditions that has been passed down since the inception, and they have followed it, and they have been followed, and they've been receiving the blessings and living the perfect life, family life, financial, educational, everything that a family should benefit. You have the aspects where certain members in the family would manifest the deity itself, that presiding deity or who they're worshiping, will come to give blessings, warnings, whatever, this and that. Alright, let me go to the part that we as children would have been sent upstairs with them. Okay, fine. Let us look at the part, look at the manifestation that they will not know much about it, but still that was strange because I witnessed at a very young age manifestation, my dad and whatever, and I wasn't intimidated, I wasn't frightened. I was curious, and eventually I was explained and sat down and whatever, and I met with the deity. I sat on their lap, sat on the vessel lap, and the deity or the entity talked very nice and calm, and I felt as though it was someone of loving nature. So, and I became attached. Alright. So when I look at those who were performing the Balidan aspect of their family tradition, a child between the age of 5 going to 10, 11 would look at the animal that is in the yard as a pet. They would look at it as an extension of the family and as a pet. So to see that mommy or daddy or somebody going to it, or uncle or whoever, taking a blade to decapitate, right? Simple. Let us look at even as far as doing a ritual. Look as more as those who have common fowl or whatever in their yard and going to kill a common fowl for a Sunday or killing a duck. A child at a young age will consider it to be barbaric or horrific or frightening in the easiest way to explain. So if you tell me that they were shunned, they were pushed away because they will not understand the ritual to the way the animal has to die, has to be offered in this manner, yes, I can understand where we would have been sent. But to say that we were totally dark and we did not know anything and we grew up not knowing, that is not factual. That is not founded. So I do not know where this information that this individual has spoken about has come from. This is not factual, this is not true. Because I follow my tradition that came from my great-grandmother. There are many countless like me, many great big families, those who are following to this day in detail the traditions that were passed down and are living that perfect life. Marriage life, no sickness, no financial problems. Children are very much educated, very, respectable and all the different things. There's no problems. The bloodline is perfect, it is healthy. There's no sense of disease or whatever, and it's working. Yes, There are those who have fallen by the wayside because of lack of knowledge or lack of the elders who were supposed to pass it on died unexpectedly, this and that, whatever. And there are other situations that would have cultivated what this individual may want to say in that aspect, but he didn't explain in that aspect. He didn't go into detail, so you know the pros and cons and where exactly how things are. So stating that we were in the dark and whatever is not factual. That is not true, because you have people following that aspect. Let us go a little further. You have certain families who have gone to the aspect of opening covils and following that, using their family traditions to help people, right? Who help to become practitioners, to help people with worship, with their family life, spiritual problems as well. So how did all this cultivate? How did they learn? How did they know? Somebody had to teach them, and then we're talking about people who did not go necessarily to a temple, to a different annex, to go to a temple to have a guru. They took from what they learned from their family that was passed down from generation to generation to generation, and they used that and now cultivated and combined with the information that is now available via technology. They have expanded on what they're doing to more strengthen what they're doing, to be more efficient in what they do. So as I said again, this what this person is saying is non-factual. It is not founded, and there it is. It creates misconception, miseducation. As I said again, there is a small percentage that would fall into what he's saying in some degree, depending if he had explained it thoroughly and broken it down for you to understand where, how, when, and why. But there's a large chunk, we're talking roughly 65 to 75%, that is not of that nature and have been following family traditions that has been passed down from generation to generation to generation till now, and are more or less experience the happy life. And they are passing it on to the other generation, the younger ones. Now you have the little children, they're present when the balidan is being done. They're foot and foot. You look on social media, you look on different platforms, you are seeing the children, little children, are there foot and foot in every aspect. Where the balidan is concerned, where the turban is concerned, because the parents to the children are cultivating them from young, so they know how, when, why, and they apply themselves. So as I said again, I do not know where this individual got his information. This should not have been projected out. His explanation is not in detail. So you can say, well, okay, I understand this, and yes, he may be partially right on that. It is not to the extent that I would have loved to. It is still disheartening that within it, you have a lot of loopholes, you have a lot of muddy spots, dark spots, and they are creating misconception, miseducation. So this one, at this point, this ends this third installation. The other video that I will do, which is the fourth one, we will go into the aspect of where someone that is 42 years into the worship, and they are trying to cultivate or trying to retain the worship in its purest nature, but in a sense also they have created misconception, and they have created misconception by stating they are talking about the aspect of offering animal or doing the balidan, and they are 42 years into the worship. So in my fourth installation, we will deal with what that individual had said, and I will do what I need to do to debunk what he has said, and we will look at it piece by piece and look at what scriptures said and whatever, what different scriptures, different books say where balidan is concerned, and try to understand what it was he was trying to say. As I said again, this individual has been in the worship for 42 years. So I hope this video was very educational for you, that it made a lot of sense, right? That things that I have said has more or less debunked misconceptions in your head to what the topic was today, right? And so forth. So I look forward to seeing you in my next and my fourth installation video. So at this point I will say Sitaram Vanakkam.